All right, everyone. We start off today talking about home lending, mortgages, and the payments that people make on them. It's being fiddled with slightly by the Biden administration in order to get people who are on the cusp of being able to be homeowners, I guess, into the housing market. And it harkens back actually to Clinton-era policies that did exactly the same thing, although by somewhat different methods. And it's not a good idea. We've tried this fundamentally before, and it blew up in our faces, causing part of the Great Recession. Although that housing bubble wasn't 100% of it, it was a chunk of it. It involved the same companies now that are being affected by this, so people should probably worry a little bit. What Biden is doing, or well, his handlers really, is making it easier for people with lower credit scores to get in by effectively adjusting the payment system so that people that have good credit and currently enjoy lower mortgage rates per month, they'll be paying more. Now, this won't affect existing mortgages. This will affect mortgages going forward. So what he's done is light a ticking time bomb, whereby you've priced out a small number of people that are reasonably middle, maybe even upper middle class out of that market because they're going to have to pay more. And you've brought in a larger group of people who are from maybe the lower middle class into home buying. Now, that in and of itself isn't a problem. If you're paying $20-30 more for your mortgage every month, but you're in that upper echelon of the middle class, probably it doesn't really affect you. And meanwhile, you've got people that would like to have homes of their own in the market. That sounds good. On paper, everything's hunky-dory. See, what happens is that eventually the violin music stops, and people realize that the ship is sinking, and that's when it becomes a problem. First, you end up with a bunch of new people in the housing market that fundamentally, because they have lower credit, that tends to be indicative they have had trouble making payments of some sort or another. Student loans comes to mind, etc., etc. People that are not as responsible with money, potentially. Some people's credit has been ruined by circumstance, and I feel sympathy for them. My credit score was fairly low for a while too because, of course, I was defaulting on my student loans for a couple of years before I sort of made it in life, and now things are fine, but there was a time when my credit was, if not terrible, not great. It wasn't good. It wasn't my fault, though. I couldn't fucking find a job. I couldn't make my student loan payments because there was no job to be had that would have actually helped me to pay the payments. I sympathize, especially with fellow millennials who got stuck with the Great Recession problems, the fallout from that. I would point out that it's awfully ironic that this particular program might set the stage for that to happen again, because what's going to happen is that Biden won't always be in office. The liberals won't always be in power, and that won't be continued thereafter. So when those payments go back to normal, presumptively, when they're readjusted to try to defuse the time bomb, a lot of people will end up losing their homes. They won't be able to make their payments. This kind of equity ESG bullshit, by the way, shouldn't even be considered illegal. The idea that if you're going to base the entire system off of credit, which is different from the way most of the world works, by the way. Anyway, the credit score system in the United States effectively was to jumpstart the economy and get people spending more. Hey, we recognize that some people consistently pay their bills. We believe that they can responsibly spend a little bit more, so we lend them credit for homes, for a car, for whatever they're getting. And then if they can continue making the payments, we reward them for that by extending them more credit lines. The idea was meritocratic. The idea was that the people that had a perfect credit score, clearly they know what they're doing, they should be able to take out loans to start businesses and shit like that. And people who clearly don't know what they're doing, again, a lot of it's circumstantial, and there are plenty of people that fall through the cracks with this. Those people, you probably don't want to give them a considerable amount of money. They don't have a high enough credit score, therefore they've made mistakes. You probably don't want them swinging and probably missing on starting a business or something. While the credit score system in and of itself is therefore problematic, and while it prevents a lot of people who do have a lot of talent from utilizing that talent and arguably has become anti-meritocratic in some fashion, if you are going to use that system, actually use it, and don't let the federal government tinker with it for the purposes of home buying or anything like that. It's a terrible idea. That kind of centralized control usually backfires. We've seen this historically. We've had a housing bubble fairly recently, and it was predicated on similar behavior. The idea of Clinton especially on, hey, here's a good way to jumpstart the economy. We'll get more people into homes. Again, the premise on paper sounds fine. The premise on paper is a positive thing. I long for a United States where everyone has their own private property, and we have nationwide castle doctrine. But that's just not realistic. It's impossible for everyone to be able to afford that. You're looking at a society that effectively would have to become communalistic in order to provide that, and then you'd be looking at pods. You'd be looking at commie blocks. Maybe that's what Biden has in mind. Hey, it'll be way easier to get more people into homes if we just lower our expectations and those homes are microscopic. At least you got a roof over your head and it belongs to you. I mean, you don't have a yard or anything, you have a little deck or something like that, but that's the new American dream. Again, lowered expectations in the globalistic era. My worry is that what's going to happen with this is that an echelon of people that have lower credit, in some cases because of their own fault, who did make bad choices, are going to take out mortgages. They're going to get those. They'll be paying less per month, etc., etc. It's subsidized effectively by the taxpayers, by default, other people with mortgages who have better credit. You get them in, and then at some indeterminate point, the economy goes south, or the demand falls off a cliff, or something else happens, or simply the program ends, that subsidy is cut off. Those people find themselves paying a couple $100 extra a month when they were already on the margin of not being able to pay that, and would not have gotten into that mortgage in the first place if not for the Biden subsidy. When that happens, again, ticking time bomb, he's lit the fuse. Down the road, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it happens to be, the longer it waits, the more people would be impacted. Those homes are pulled out from under the people. They suffer. Again, they've got to lower their expectations again now because they've lost their home and they're still in debt. And then you have another housing crisis, a bunch of foreclosed homes. BlackRock can then come in and sweep those homes up and find more meritocratic buyers for them, thus increasing the amount of money that was made on that property overall on the backs of the U.S. taxpayers. That's what's going to, unfortunately, I think, happen with this. That's about all. Peace out.